What is good people? You are now listening to another episode of Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. I am your humble narrator, Danny Foxworth, and once again, we're joined by an extremely special guest. Man, me and this guy, man, we go way back in the day, man. Man, them Long Ridge summers, man, it was a special time. I think
Yes, man.
last time I saw this brother was at our 20-year reunion.
Yeah,
It's been 5 years.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
wild, man. But yeah, man, he from the crib, man. I mean, it's only right that I reach out to the crib more often. So
True
with me
indeed.
tonight is my dog Dame Shabazz, man. What's good, bro?
Peace, peace. How y'all doing, man? How you doing, man?
Man, living life, man.
Yeah,
So
it's all we can do, man.
yes, sir. So we gonna get right into it, man. Moncks Corner. What was that
Hmm.
like? What was that like for a young Damon?
Ah, man. So Moncks Corner is crazy for me because I started out in Moncks Corner a little bit, and we moved away and went to Cross. Shout out to the Cross Trojans, Coach Sean right out there. So we went out to Cross for a while, but always had our roots in Long Ridge, especially with
Yes,
my
sir.
grandmother. Of course, you already know, you know how that go
Yes, sir.
and that was an every weekend thing. So I always stay connected in that way. But Monk's Corner for me, man, it's just home. It's quaint, it's cozy, it's safe. Well, for me, and not necessarily just safe as in like crime or this, that, or whatever. But I mean, it's just a safe space. You know what I mean? It's a lot of familiar faces, and it's always a lot of love. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
So, Monk's Corner is special, man. It's and there's a lot of talent in Monk's Corner. You know what I mean? It's a lot of
Yeah.
diversity, a lot of diverse personalities, and a lot of just stuff in Monk's Corner that people don't think about when they see it or hear about it from the outside. I
Right.
remember when I was in basic training, man, and there's a period where they're giving out mail and they're saying, Ortega, Brooklyn, New York, and Sanchez, California, this place or whatever. And then my drill sergeant, who was actually from the Carolinas, he was like, Simmons, Monk's Corner. And everybody in the formation busted out laughing. And he says, is it as small as it sounds? I said, maybe a little smaller. But again, quaint, it's love. It's always been love. It always will be that, no matter how far we go, we always keep our roots here, man. So it's always a special place.
100%, man. So what were some of your favorite places to hang out at in Moncks Corner?
Whew. So for me, oh goodness, shout out to Haynesville, shout out to Carnival Hall, Long Ridge, of course. Anywhere there was a basketball court.
True.
Anywhere I could find a basketball court was my favorite place to hang out, man. If we were playing ball, it was me, Omari, Joey, Allen, Quinn, you
Yo,
know, yeah, man. You
Quinn
know,
Varner. Golly, I ain't heard
yes.
that name in years.
Shout out to Q. Yes, man. Quinn. Eric. Yeah, man. Anywhere I could find a basketball, because by that time I was moving around on my own in Monk's Corner. Like anywhere I could find to play some sports, man. Anywhere I could find some sports. And I'm kind of jealous of these kids now because they've got that new park and everything, man. I'm really jealous, man. So even now, sometimes I'll go out there and just shoot and just enjoy the park. But yeah, man, for me, anywhere I could play ball. Do you remember I think it was on Main Street. It used to be a card shop though. Do you remember that place?
I do. It was
Oh,
right before you crossed the track.
yes. So when I used to live in Haynesville, me and RJ Haynes and Derek Dingle, we would ride our bikes to that card shop, man, right before the train tracks, man. And I mean, oh
Really?
God. Yeah, man. We would OD on cards and comic books. And man, that place to us, especially when I was in Haynesville, when we were in riding distance, that was the place for me, man. The card shop. I miss that place. I miss those kind of places.
Yeah, me too. I think it's a barber shop now.
Mm-hmm. It could be a barber shop or a restaurant, something like that. I'm not 100% sure.
Yeah, I'm fairly certain it's a barber shop now. Man, speaking of which, speaking of that area, man, when's the last time you walked in the Barrens?
The Baron. What's crazy is, oh my God. So the last time I walked into Barron's, I was actually it was about no, it was before the pandemic. I was jogging. And I was like, man, I gotta use the bathroom. Just regular. I'm like, man, I gotta use the bathroom. And I was like, man, I remember Maurice. I forget Maurice's last name. You remember Maurice, our
Maurice
classmate.
Thompson.
Maurice Thompson. Yeah. Smooth, quiet Maurice Thompson. He used to always hold a job down there.
He sure
And I
did.
was, yeah, listen, he had that job. He moved from Cross too, as a matter of fact. So I knew, so it was cool when he transferred over to Moncks Corner, when his parents moved over to Moncks Corner, to see his face from Cross, it was a trip. But Maurice always was in there. And I was like, man, I wonder what's in there. So I went in there, just walked around and looked and seen some of the clothes and stuff like that. I was like, man, this place was a trip, man, back in the day. Cause it used to be, if we had to go pick up something real quick on the fly for a school dance or something like that, we wasn't going all the way to Charleston. Like who had that time or that money to go all the way out there? Nah. And when we were kids, Charleston was like an odyssey to us. Especially if we didn't drive. It was like it was like leaving the country for us.
Exactly. It really was.
Yeah. So going to Barron's to get a quick shirt, a quick button up, especially for things like dances. And, we had all the dances, all the cotillions, all the senior proms and stuff like that. So it was always a quick run in and go to get a dress shirt, get some cufflinks, get a tie, some black socks, whatever. So it was always a go-to, man. So it was a good thing to go back up in there and just kind of feel that vibe again. I felt almost the only part that was missing was Maurice, man. So shout out to Maurice.
Yeah, wherever he may be, man. Shout out to him for real. I walked in the Barron's. Gosh, I went in there on my lunch break probably at one time last year, and I was I shouldn't really be surprised, but it was like taking a trip back in time because it looks exactly the same.
Yeah.
Like they even got like the fake grass floor in there still.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, they still got the faded out Stacey Adams posters in there. I was like,
oh God.
You don't get no realer than that, man.
I know you did not buy no Stacey Adams in there, all right?
No, I didn't buy any Stacey Adams.
Not this time.
I was just in there to look. I didn't buy anything.
True indeed. True indeed.
But man, so with the hat on your head, man, we got to talk about this, man.
Oh goodness,
the New York Knickerbockers. So how did you become a Knicks fan? Because I never knew how you became a Knicks fan.
Okay, so growing up, I was always a Laker fan. First of all, loved Magic Johnson. Like I remember stealing NBA Superstars. It was an old VHS tape that you would get from Sports Illustrated. And Magic was the first one. They did a tribute to all the stars with music. And Magic was the first one. And Magic was he was a beautiful basketball player because he was tall and he was smiling and busting tail. You know what I mean? And I was like, man, I love this guy because he's laughing and they're serious.
Yeah.
And it was just he captured me. But as I became become to get a little bit older, I always was drawn to Patrick Ewing for some reason. Because in my child naive mind, I thought Georgetown was like Georgetown, right on the way to Myrtle Beach from the 80s. Remember the Hoya Destroyers?
Oh yeah.
So in my child mind, I thought, John Thompson, Patrick Ewing, those guys. I thought that was an HBCU. So I was a lot of people
did. I did too.
Yes, man. And so loved Magic, but there was a different ferocity about Patrick Ewing or whatever.
Yeah.
And just as I'm watching the game and falling deeper and deeper in love with the game, I started picking up these guys' stories. So you start doing your research on these players and more. You fall in love with the game, and they had these, because as you grow up and you start playing yourself, you start saying, man, I want to be like this guy or that guy. And I always wanted to be like one of the tough guys, Yeah. So that was a place where I could kind of like apply an alter ego, because some people remember, probably don't, but I wasn't that boisterous as a kid. I wasn't that vocal as a kid, but it was on the court where I could kind of like let it out a little bit.
Yeah.
But the guys that would let it out the most, I thought, when I looked, it was the Knicks. It was Patrick Ewing, but then they had this smooth point guard. Um, they had Rod Strickland, but they had Mark Jackson. And then they got Xavier McDaniel, and I was like, whoa, 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 man. Xavier McDaniel, and he was known as the X-Man. And I was like,
Yeah.
man, I like that because I'm a comic geek. So I love the fact that they got a guy named X-Man. And then they got this kid, short kid, light-skinned kid, got a little peewee on the top. Number 3, John Starks. And I'm like, he's got an attitude. He's not necessarily a flair, but this is before the dog in him was a thing.
Mm-hmm.
But he had a dog in him. You could see it, like, and he was unafraid. I mean, we all love Michael Jordan. We all marveled at Michael Jordan. But it was a guy. He was one of the few guys you could tell he wasn't really afraid of him.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? He wasn't really afraid. So as I dig deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper and find out about the John Stark story, I mean, like, he's a complete underdog. And I'm like, man, I love this guy because he's undersized for one.
Yeah.
He is. So, you know, again, going back to that card shop, now I'm collecting all the cards, and I want every roster. And I'm like, okay, well, everybody's a first round pick. Well, dang, he ain't a first round pick. So he is the epitome of getting it from the mud. He's coming from that place they call, that's done now, the CBA, Continental Basketball Association. So I'm like, man, so he really grinded. He used to bag groceries.
Yep.
Yeah, he used to eat pancakes for dinner. I'm like, man, shoot, I used to do that every now and again. So his story so resonated with me so, and that's kind of the thing that initially brought me to love the New York Knicks. And again, my grandfather, rest in peace, Moses Williams. He is from New York, and in my uncle Cassius and my uncle Troy, Troy Hayward. Shout out to him. This guy who I emulated a lot. Spent a lot of time with him in my teenage years. So, you know, I just more and more just started gravitating to him. And anybody can cheer for a great team, but again, when anybody can cheer for the Lakers. Like I haven't cheered for the Lakers since Kobe passed. But again, anybody can cheer for the Lakers, but it's the family ties that I have when it comes to just New York, the city itself. And those stories of those old Knicks, those, you know, Charles Oakley, those guys were characters, man. Anthony Mason, Larry Johnson, Spree, Allen Houston. I mean, it's just, even though they weren't champions, they just were rich stories.
Yeah.
So these are the things why that's a real reason I kind of fell in love with the Knicks. So anytime people see me wearing like Knicks things or stuff like that, I'm really doing two things. I'm paying homage to the team, but I'm also paying homage to my family, my grandfather especially. So, and my Uncle Troy, Uncle Cassius, Uncle Bruce, those guys. So anytime you see me wearing Knicks swag, I'm kind of doing it for those two reasons.
Dope. So what were some of your favorite Knicks moments?
The 4-point play. 4-point play.
Yeah, that crowd lost their mind after that.
Bananas. That was bananas. The dunk. Starks on Horace Grant and Jordan. Yes, Jordan was in that one. He can't claim that he wasn't.
Talk about it. Yes.
Yeah. He you know, and that's the thing about Mike. I mean, everybody can admit when they're bested, but he just can't do it. He was in that poster. I've seen it a million times.
Yes.
Yeah. Let's see. Goodness gracious. I mean, I guess the Knicks being the first 8 seed to ever make it to the NBA Finals, even though they didn't win, that was a special team because that was a team full of underdogs. I mean, Ewing was out. Ewing was out. LJ had a bad leg. We were, and this is Tim Duncan's like second year, and with David Robinson. So it was like, oh gosh, like this is an insurmountable task. So, and again, I dislike Bill Walton. I can never agree with anything Bill Walton says. I just his commentary. But yeah, and I think currently or recently, I gotta say, you know, some of the Melo led team Knicks,
Oh, of
are
course.
pretty solid too. Was that 2013? We put the Celtics out. That was good. And Melo was a bucket and a half. So man, yeah, those are some of my favorite moments as a Knicks fan.
So do you remember when they used to have their training camp at the College of Charleston?
Listen, yes. And I remember that year in 94 when they actually came and did it at the College of Charleston. My Uncle Troy went. I was a kid, I couldn't go. And didn't have no money back then, but my Uncle Troy went and they scrimmaged against the Rockets and ended
Yep.
up having to play them in the finals.
Yep. And that's why I was actually at my granny's old house, like just
Mm-hmm.
looking through her stuff after she passed away, and I actually found a picture from that game at the Coliseum.
Mm-hmm.
I was like,
Really?
wow, yeah, yeah. And it's wild that you mentioned that those same two teams played in the preseason, and then here they go, they play in the finals, which also got preempted when they had that split screen to
Yeah.
show the OJ case in real time.
That
Do you?
that was wow.
I said, do you remember where you were when that happened?
Carnival Hall, man. I remember sitting in my mom's living room. I think me and Omari were watching the game, as a matter of fact. And you know, I just remember them interrupting the game and me like being upset that they're minimizing the Knicks to watch the OJ thing, but
Yeah,
also feeling like I was cheating because I was like, well, wait a minute, like seriously, this is a chase. Like they don't seem like they're going that fast.
right. I had the
Um,
same reaction.
yeah, I was like, they don't seem like they're going that fast, and again, as the story developed and we saw them pull into the driveway of his mom's house and stuff like that, it was a moment where I was like, I just cannot believe this is truly happening, like unfolding
Yeah,
real time. And by the way, we're down by one or two or whatever. So I'm like, I and my mom's in the back of in her room, like watching dedicated the OJ stuff, and I got the game with the split screen on. So it was a surreal thing. It was really bizarre. I'll say that. It was
yeah,
really bizarre.
it was because I remember when that happened because it was on a Sunday. I had just finished eating Sunday dinner. I was sitting at the kitchen table eating apple pie for my dessert, and we had a little black and white 13-inch TV
Mm-hmm.
on the kitchen bar, and I was watching the Knicks game in the kitchen, and that happened. I was like, what in the world is going on? And
Right?
yeah, come to find out, it was a lot. The story was a lot bigger than I initially thought.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I vividly remember that, and I know I taught another Knicks thing. I don't know if you heard one of my previous episodes when I talked about Anthony Mason cussing me out.
No. Mace cussed you out?
Yeah, so it was during training camp. It was me and a couple of my homies. We were in the Charleston Place Hotel. Well, it was the Omni Hotel at the time because that's where they were staying. And he was coming down from the second floor into the lobby. And I guess he had one too many to drink the night before. So he's raising hell at the people at the front desk. It was him, it was Charles Smith, and it was Anthony Bonner.
Don't say
And
Charles Smith, please.
yeah, and my bad. A forward who shall remain nameless.
Correct. Yes, sir.
All right, so
Number 50.
yeah, number 54 and Anthony Bonner. I mean, they were all in their right mind. It was Mace who was acting a fool. So after they leave the front desk, they're walking down the hall towards the meeting street entrance. And me and my homies, we his mom took us to the Charleston Place Hotel to see if we could get autographs. So she goes in the bathroom, and while she's in the bathroom, they're making their way towards us down the hallway. And so my homie, like, he taps they walk past us, and we're all looking up like, wow, that's really them. And my homie taps me, and he tugs my shirt. He's like, yo, talk to her, go get Anthony Mason's autograph. So I run up, I tap Mace on the shoulder. He turns around. He was like, I'm a big fan of yours. Like, my mom and his mom's a big fan of yours. Can we get an autograph? I mean, dog, like, his eyes look like brake lights. They were so bloodshot. And he turned around And after I asked him for the autograph, he turned around, he looked at me, he goes, "Man, get the fuck out my face, kid," and then turned around and kept walking towards Meeting Street. At first, I was
Woo!
devastated, but then I was like, "Yo, I really got cussed up by Anthony Mason. Yo, that is the coolest thing ever."
Yep.
His mom walks out the bathroom. She was like, "What was all that commotion?" And my homie was like, told his mom, he was like, "Yeah, Anthony Mason just cussed Danny out." And she goes, where his ass at?" And by the time she asked that question, they were already out of the hotel making their way down Meeting Street to the practice facility. But yeah, man, every time I see a hit Anthony Mason, I just smile, and that's automatically what first thing I think of, man.
Mason, and I'm sure he was at that age. You were a lot smaller, so I'm sure he looked like a mountain compared to you at that time.
Oh yeah, I was every bit of 13, so I was like maybe 5'6", 5'7".
Yeah,
I mean, he's like
yeah,
a whole foot and like another 150 pounds more than me. I
yes,
mean, he looked like a comic book character.
yeah. And what's crazy is, and a lot of people will debate it, but he's one of those guys that is the archetype for the point forward.
Yes,
And
yes.
doesn't get credit for that. I mean, Scottie Pippen did it too, but I know people will say, who was it? Sam Presti from the Milwaukee Bucks. They'll give him Marquez Johnson quite possibly, but the common archetype that we know for and I'm being super nerdy when it comes to ball, but yeah.
Nerd out.
But I mean, Mace is one of those guys that laid the foundation of, being able to be big and handle it from the front court. So Mace doesn't get enough credit for that kind of thing, man. Rest in peace, Mace.
100%, man.
Yeah,
So
man.
talk about wrestling. So
Oh,
because I know you're a big wrestling fanatic too. So
yes.
what were some of your earliest memories of wrestling?
Oh my God. So again, like I always tie things to my family, always. So some of my earliest memories is, you know, uh some of my earliest memories is me and my mom on my grandmother's house watching and I'm gonna date myself, watching Wahoo McDaniel,
Yep.
Magnum TA, Dusty. I mean, listen, Dusty Rhodes, Arn Anderson, the Four Horsemen.
Talk about
Um,
it.
so so again, especially back then, before the Monday Night Wars and all of that stuff, back then wrestling and following these different organizations, it was very not yeah, it was almost like gang. It was like you're picking what gang or what set you're running with. And in the Carolinas, we were with the Crockett's, man. We were with the
Yep.
Crockett's because it was nothing for us to go to a Hardee's and see Ric Flair and Birdhead Jones. It was nothing for them to be at the somewhere downtown, the Johnson Haygood Stadium or something like that. You know what I mean? Or Norfolk Scope or anything like that. So it was always those guys. But again, I'm a geek, so I still love the WWE or WWF stuff. So I was always enthralled with guys like Mr. Perfect, Kurt Hennig, uh, oh goodness, Rick Rude, Sean the Rocker, Shawn Michaels, Axe and Smash, Demolition, those guys.
Oh man, Demolition.
Yeah, man. I and the thing about wrestling, especially for a young man, is you get into it because you can draw strength from these characters because they are characters, right? You draw strength and whatever you need from these characters as a young man, and as you get a little bit mature and you start smelling yourself, you kind of, at least for me, I kind of got away from it, and once I got away from it for just a year or two, maybe, and I kind of circled back and I kind of remember the fondness I felt and the togetherness I felt with my family watching that stuff, man. So
Yeah.
I've been back into it, I got kind of grew out of it for a little while, got right back into it, still watching it to this day, man.
Man, and you talking about, growing up,
Mm-hmm.
like your childhood as far as wrestling goes, it was so similar to mine because my papa was a huge fan of Chief J Strongbow and
Mm-hmm.
Wahoo McDaniel. I
Yes.
remember my dad telling me, like when they were kids, like if they were out somewhere on a Saturday, he's like got his foot on the gas, like hauling ass trying to get back home to watch his wrestling matches.
Mm-hmm.
And I know with like with the NWA stuff, that's I'd go to whenever I spend weekends over at my grandparents' house because they had cable. And I remember
Mm-hmm.
NWA wrestling used to come on Saturday mornings too. And
Yes.
just like you talked about the aforementioned Magnum TA, he was one of my favorites, man. And God, Arn
Yeah.
Anderson and Tully Blanchard, Nature Boy Ric Flair, man.
Yeah. Listen. Listen. Those guys are so pivotal.
Yeah.
So pivotal to our upbringing. Especially, I mean, like I remember I remember being afraid of guys like Nikita Koloff
Dude,
and
yes.
being afraid of like when the Road Warriors were heels, when they were bad guys, like being deathly afraid of him. Jake the Snake Roberts, like I was like, and I would be mesmerized. But the guys that would draw me in, um, the guys that would draw me in, and one of the reasons I always loved wrestling is because it was the one thing where you got the antagonist, you got the protagonist, and this is where the one time where the antagonist sometime went, he kind of wins sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So, because if you read a comic book, if you read a comic book, like Magneto's going to lose at some point in time
Yeah,
in the issue, right? You watch cartoons, the Transformers always win within 22 minutes of the show,
true.
unless it's to be continued. But wrestling was the one thing where the bad guy could tell you, I'm better than you. You know what? I'm going to cheat. I'm going to break the rules. Nobody's going to catch me, and I'm going to win. And not only am I going to win, I'm going to walk out with girls, and I'm going to walk out with that gold belt. And I'm like, holy snap. Like, is Ric Flair really going to beat the hell out of Ron Garvin this week? Like,
Mm-hmm.
seriously? Like, did Arn and Tully really break Dusty Rhodes's freaking arm and ankle or whatever? Man, so it was that kind of thing that always kind of locked me in. And the guys that would do the good promos were the guys that I loved the most. So like that's why I liked Mr. Perfect. He was a snob. He was great, but and again, I get it, but if you had to draft up a guy, if you had to draw a guy to be a vain, self-absorbed snob, you draw him. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? With his bright singlet on, with that Intercontinental title on, chomping gum with his curly blonde hair. You draw that guy if you had to create a bad guy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So yeah,
The
man.
man had a video of him. The man threw the football to himself.
To himself and caught it.
One of my favorite vignettes ever.
Listen, but those guys that could cut promos were the guys that I loved. So as I became older, I would appreciate like Arn Anderson's promos and Jake the Snake's promos because Jake the Snake was almost talking to you in a riddle, and he wouldn't raise his voice, but he would do subtle things like look snare over his shoulder and hunch down, and so it was a lot of psychology in that early stage of the 80s and 90s of wrestling, before it changed, before the Monday Night Wars. There's a lot of psychology in it, man. So that's why I've always enjoyed it.
Yeah. Saturday night's main event. That was always a treat, man.
Listen,
That was
listen,
always that
Saturday.
was
So
such a treat,
I
man.
remember, listen, I remember staying up with it was me, my brother, and my cousin Elvin at my grandma Sarah's house, staying up, fighting sleep, staying up to watch Saturday Night Main Event. And there's one I remember the most vivid. It's when Andre choked out Hogan.
Yeah.
They like nobody can get him off, and like Hacksaw Jim Duggan had to like use a 2x4 and hit him, and they had to get all the good guys to like help Hogan out the ring. And Jesse Ventura is saying to was it Mean Gene? No, it wasn't Mean Gene. He's saying to Vince McMahon, he's like, Hogan looks helpless to me. He is helpless. He is helpless, McMahon. And I mean, and Andre's hands look like baseball gloves around Hogan's neck. And I remember they're playing this song like "Take Me Home" because I don't remember.
Yes. The
and
Phil Collins joint.
Like,
yes.
And I'm like, and I'm a Hogan fan. And I'm sitting in front of the TV, starry-eyed, teary-eyed, like, this can't be it. This can't be the end of Hulkamania.
Because they played "Take Me Home" and it went off.
Yeah, man.
I was distraught too.
I was destroyed. I was like, this can't be it. Like, it's not over. It's coming back on, right? You know, and we had to wait another week and got our updates and all that stuff. Man, so that episode, man, it stuck with me. That one, and when the $1 Million Man paid for the belt.
Yes.
With the Earl Hebners. Oh, hold on. So it's that one. It's the 2 referees with Earl Hebner. And it was and again, I'm a mark for Kurt Hennig, Mr. Perfect. There's a time where the Genius is wrestling Hulk Hogan. And Mr. Perfect steals the belt, takes his belt, and takes the hammer and destroys it. Beats the belt down, destroys it. And he's like, this is not a perfect belt. It'll never be a perfect belt until it's around my waist. And I mean, and the Genius is being funny and laughing. And man, it was hilarious. And again, this is when I start saying, I kind of like the bad guys a little bit better. They're a little bit cooler.
Man, and I'll tell you 2 other moments from that era that freaked me out as a kid too. When Jake the Snake Dame, well, no, he had the Cobra. And that Cobra sunk his fangs into Randy Savage's arm. I thought for sure he was going to die.
Yes.
Dude, I was freaking out in that house watching that thing, man. Unbeknownst to me, they took the venom sacs out of the Cobra, but still.
But we didn't know.
Yeah.
We didn't know. And I was like, hold on. That was a good job, even though it wasn't supposed to happen like that. But the lines of reality were completely blurred. Because I'm like, wait a minute, hold on. Like, I know about devenoming a snake. I know about that part. And I know about defanging a snake. But those are fangs. I saw the fangs, and it's stuck in them. And Jake's tapping the snake on the head, trying to get him to loosen up, and this snake won't loosen up. And I'm thinking to myself, is this what's supposed to happen right now?
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that thing is supposed to be on him and biting and chomping and sinking the teeth even deeper and deeper into him. I don't think this is supposed to happen.
Yeah.
So I remember extremely confused when I saw that one. But to Macho Man's credit, I mean, he sold it.
Yes,
like when he got up and he was swinging, falling down, like he sold it completely, lock, stock, and barrel. So man, the lines were blurred at that point in time for me completely.
100%. And then the other moment was when the Undertaker stuffed Ultimate Warrior in that casket and sealed it shut.
I remember that too.
And then they acted like they locked it, because whenever they sealed the case shut, they did this extra sound effect to make it sound like the air sealed shut in it. And like he was in that casket for felt like almost 10 minutes, and then like the crew was coming in to like trying to frantically pry the casket back open. When they pried it open, he wasn't breathing. Like I literally burst into tears.
Do you remember? But do you remember when they opened the casket, the top of the casket where the cushioning was torn up?
Yeah. And
I was like, oh snap. I don't think he's breathing. I was like, I don't think he's breathing.
Yeah.
I remember, I definitely vividly remember that one. That was a bit of an over the top story, but still, it suspended my childhood belief. Again, that subtlety, that sound effect of the air being sucked out before when it closed. So that was huge. That was cool. That was really cool.
That's man, and then got the Attitude Era. I was super on board with the Attitude Era, man. That was a special time, man.
Okay, so the Attitude Era is different.
Yeah.
Attitude Era is special because of a couple of different reasons. First of all, we were in high school at that time.
Yes.
And so everything, and this is before everything was PC. This was 96, 97, 98. So this is, heck, it could have even been, yeah, like 96, 97, 98. So this before everything was PC. So, I mean, you talk about people doing crotch chops, super kicks. I can't tell you how many people, shout out to Coach Green, shout out to anybody that I've been in gym class or in weightlifting class with. I can't tell you how many times I put somebody in a stone cold stunner in high school. I can't tell you. I can't tell you how many times I put somebody in a sharpshooter.
Yeah.
In high school, and it was they marketed that stuff to us to death, and it worked.
Yes, it
and
did.
It targeted us, and it worked. I mean, it was a great time. It was a lot of great characters. The Shawn Michaels character had turned from a pretty boy to a degenerate. That was cool.
Yeah.
Seeing Steve Austin. And again, we didn't say anything about WCCW. Did you ever watch WCCW at all?
Mm-hmm.
World Class? So again, I'm a geek and I love wrestling. So I remember, and again, it's not Piggly Wiggly anymore, but there was Barons and then there was Piggly Wiggly. You remember that?
Yep.
So when I would go to my grandmother's house, Mama Sarah's house on the weekends, and if we would go to the store, I would always go. It was what wrestling mag? I don't know if it was PW Pro Wrestling Insider. I can't remember which one it was, but there was a it could have been Pro Wrestling Illustrated, where they would have like rankings of different wrestlers from different companies. So when I would go home, since we did have cable and have ESPN, we'd watch WCCW. So we would see guys like Iceman, King Parsons, the Freebirds, the Von Erich, Gino Hernandez, Chris Adams. But you would see stuff like USWA and CWF, and you would see somebody like the Lightning Kid, who turned into the 1-2-3 Kid, and the 1-2-3 Kid turns to X-Pac or whoever. But I remember seeing Stunning Steve Austin. And I remember that he used to do this move. He used to call it the stun gun in WCW. You remember that?
Yep.
He would do this thing called the stun gun. And I was like, man, that is a dope move, because it's just you using the guy's momentum, throwing them into the ropes, and boom. But then when we get to WWF, though, to the Attitude Era, he's still technically, I mean, amazing in the ring, but he's changed his style completely. And I mean, it was completely captivating. I mean, it was what every little boy wanted to tell every authority figure in their life, be it a teacher, be it a coach, who, I mean, whatever. I mean, we were flipping birds, we were crotch chopping, we were, I mean, we were listening to Voodoo Child, because we were still, because even though the Attitude Era was what it was, it still had one of my favorites of all time, which is Scott Hall. As Ramon. I have the Intercontinental title in my house because of Scott Hall and Mr. Perfect. And Scott Hall is, yeah, man. Well, I mean, think about it. Goodness, hold on a second. They are killing me. Woo. Can you hear that? Oh, okay, never mind. But yeah. So you know, the Intercontinental Championship has always been. I know I don't mean to get off on a tangent, but Intercontinental Championship was like always the workhorse belt. So you always had guys like Tito Santana, Ricky Steamboat, Macho Man, Austin, Rock, all the greats. Bret Hart, who was one of my favorites too. All those guys always had that belt and put in some work before they got to the real belt.
Ultimate Warrior, same thing.
Yeah, all those guys. So to have all those different characters, and it was truly a war because
Keep talking.
because we would flip from WWE to WCW all the time because again we wanted to, it was counterculture in wrestling at the time. It was really a trip. It was looking at some of the cartoony characters from WWE, but then looking at Scott Hall coming in with a leather jacket or a denim jacket, some J's or something like that, or and just saying, hey, I'm not Razor Ramon, I'm Scott Hall, and I'm here to beat up these guys because I'm better than them. You know where I'm from? I'm from up the street.
Yeah.
But you know what? Sting can't touch me. Macho Man can't touch me. The Monday Night Wars was a special time. The Attitude Era was a special time. A lot of great stuff came out of the Attitude Era, man. A lot.
Yes, sir. Did you watch Nitro too?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. So here's how I used to do it. I used to watch like Raw in my room, and then I would record WCW in the living room on a VHS. So I had to be able to see both of them. I just had, I was that much of a maniac. I loved watching Bill Goldberg, and I loved watching Scott Hall and those guys. But I also loved watching guys like Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Chris Benoit, and those cruiserweights, Juventud Guerrero, man. Those guys were
Hoovy Juice.
Yeah, man. Those guys were amazing, man.
Ultimo Dragon.
Yeah, Ultimo Dragon. Ultimo Dragon was that. Do you remember Jushin Thunder Liger?
Yes, I do.
So he was the guy that made me start watching and pay attention to Japanese wrestling because
Really?
oh yeah. So there was a long time ago in the NWA, early WCW, they used to have this thing, and I know you know exactly what it is. It's called the Great American Bash.
Mm-hmm.
And WCW was flirting with this idea of having a light heavyweight title. And they had this guy that everybody loved. And his name was Flying Brian Pillman.
Yes.
So it was Brian Pillman and Yushin Thunder Liger for the WCW Light Heavyweight Championship. And my goodness, when I saw Yushin Thunder Liger, the presentation was amazing. The moves were insane. It was like nothing I'd ever seen before. And it was different because he was after this other guy that I'm about to mention and blow your mind, the Great Muta. The Great Muta, the first time I saw him, he scared the hell out. I used to have dreams about the Great Muta spraying that green mist.
That green mist, yeah.
In my face. Like Great Muta was that guy, man. And again, I'm a goof. I remember him versus Sting for the television title, and just how legit. And I have a replica of the NWA television title with the red strap in my house also. Because of that rivalry, man. Like it was especially early in the game in the 80s, 90s, the game was so rich with talent. You had belts and you had feuds that meant a lot. So just because it was Sting and Muta, they would add that legitimacy to a television title. Or, Mr. Perfect, again, they say this thing that the belt shouldn't make the man should make the belt.
Yeah.
And Mr. Perfect did that in spades. You know what I mean? Sting did that in spades. It didn't matter if it was the tag team titles. It didn't matter if it was the again, I was about to say US tag team titles. Shout out to the Midnight Express. But
beautiful Bobby Eaton, Sweet Stan Lane.
Beautiful Bobby Eaton and Sweet Stan, the Midnight Express. Love those guys, man. But again, but the Attitude Era just changed everything because they stole a lot of ideas from ECW, I think, because ECW was like you've been listening to so WCW, and again, we can talk about hip hop. The first CD I ever bought was DJ Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince. Parents just don't understand. First album I ever bought. First album I ever bought with my own money. So listening and watching WWE and WCW was like listening to Jazzy Jeff and Fresh Prince. ECW was like listening to NWA.
Yeah.
Listen, I Ain't the One. It's like, Dope Man. It was like, holy hell, it's New Jack, it's Too Cold Scorpio. Hold on a second. I'm sorry. Is Sandman drinking a beer coming to the ring? And what the hell is Raven really talking about? I don't know what he's really saying, but damn, it sounds brooding and deep. And God, he's a tortured soul. And Tommy Dreamer and this guy and that guy.
Tommy
So it was
Dreamer, come on, man.
yeah, man, it was
Sabu.
Sabu. The the whole effing show.
Yes.
RVD, Jerry Lynn, Perry Saturn, those guys, it was just a counterculture, but it was telling storylines that were more reality based, than having, guys like Savio Vega or a Max Moon or a Duke the Dumpster Drosy or the Repo Man. It was different than
the Repo Man.
God,
Yo.
we laughed, did we not? But we laughed at the Repo Man gimmick because it was funny.
Yeah. Come
It,
on,
it
man.
was
Erwin R. Shyster.
Yes, a lot, a lot of job gimmicks, a lot of those things, like Skinner or the Godwins, a lot of just goofy gimmicks.
Mm-hmm.
But EW was in your face, and yes, they had a different brand. It was ultra violent. It was, but they kind of copied those things or just borrowed some of those things, those nuances, that reality based storytelling, from them to kind of cultivate what the Attitude Era was.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how you get is. So if it's not for ECW, you don't get The Rock telling you know your role, shut your damn mouth. You don't, you know what I mean? You don't get Val Venus and those guys. You know what I mean? If you don't have the Tommy Dreamers and the Shane Douglases,
Oh.
yeah, man, if you go back and look at some of those promos, you can see the direct correlation between Shane Douglas and Triple H. Ponytail, leather jacket, hot chick on his arm, just being a complete jerk. I got the belt. You can't beat me. I got a stable of guys with me that you got to get through to get to me. You know what I mean? So it's just borrowing right from each other. You know what I mean? But again, it helped. WWE had the backing, they had the marketing. So yeah, man, they just pushed it to another level, man.
100%. So, as far as current day wrestlers, who you latched on to?
Oh my God. Okay, so me and all the kiddos, we still watch. They've not transitioned to watching AEW yet because they're still learning.
Yeah.
But they love Cody Rhodes. They love Cody Rhodes, and I'm at the point in life now where I got to say, yeah, I used to watch his father, so that kind of that's humbling as hell.
Yeah.
But I'm at the point where I say, yeah, I used to watch his father. But yeah, man, Cody, Seth Rollins is like he's like Shawn Michaels 2.0. I mean, just a great worker. Um, Roman's undeniable. The character change is definitely a good one. One character that I absolutely love, rest in peace, Bray Wyatt, man.
Oh man.
Wyndham Rotunda was a beautiful performer. I mean, a wonderful performer, great storyteller, just smooth as hell in the ring. Randy Orton, he's another guy, man. Smooth. I mean, just smooth. Almost on. A lot of people will say Shawn Michaels is the greatest wrestler, performer of all time. A lot of people will say that. Some people will say Ric Flair. I think Randy's in that vein. I mean, there's nothing in the ring he can't do. You know what I mean? So yeah, I mean that you still have your guys like your you got to shout out Booker T. Love Booker T. He's
Me
hilarious.
too. We want to
Yeah.
go, sucker.
Every time I see Booker T on social media, I just say Booker, Booker. But is one of the goats because I remember the Ebony Express, and I remember when he came into WCW with Colonel Rob Parker, and just being like, why are these two big black guys with this white guy who obviously owned slaves? You know what I mean? And obviously that was the button they were trying to push. But Booker was a performer's performer. I mean, could do everything, could be a heel, could be a face. I always tell the kids, and the kids refer to me as King Booker in the house, as a matter of fact. But again, it's just us being silly. So they're into it again. They're into it. I think Cody Rhodes is their guy, so they can sing his entrance music, I think.
Oh yeah, when that I mean, the whole crowd gets involved when this entrance music comes on, man.
Yes,
that's so dope to see.
Yeah, man, and it's a definite redemption story. Is going out on your own, going risking it for yourself, putting yourself out there, man. That's huge. Saying, security is one thing. Having security is a good thing in life. As we get older, we get used to certain things and stuff like that. But to bet on yourself, like he did, and being able to come back, but not as Stardust or dashing Cody Rhodes, but to come back as the person he saw himself as. Yeah. That's a good story. You can translate that in anybody's life, in any business, in any facet of anybody's life. You can put that to life anytime.
True indeed. So now I want to talk about something else that you're passionate about, because I go on your IG page and you always keep a fresh pair of kicks on at the ready, man. So being a sneakerhead, how did that come to be?
Hold on, give me just 1 second. Let me close this window.
Okay.
Please, sir.
Go ahead.
Yes. All right. So me becoming a sneakerhead again is just my absolute love and obsession for basketball. I mean, I remember wanting the weapons when Magic had them, and Magic and Bird, and again, I'm 1,000 years old, so I remember when Dr. J was doing this thing, but I remember wanting a pair of weapons, and then in 80, I think it was 5 or 84.
Yeah.
Jordan coming out, and I was like, holy cow, like, what are these? And they weren't, again, by today's standards, $65, $70 wasn't everything. But, for working class parents or working class mom, that's a hell of an investment on something kid's going to wear on his feet and probably destroy. So I don't remember ever having Jordans as a child until I could, work for myself. But I always made sure, and the guys that I hung around, especially my brother's friends, they always made sure. So and again, shout out to Carnival Hall, shout out to Haynesville. Those guys always made sure, like, I had cool shoes, even if I had to put on double socks. So be it some Adidas, some Ewings, they were normally hand-me-downs, but I mean, just seeing those guys that were older than us wearing, those different kinds of sneakers, stuff like that it always intrigued me. So I was like, man, whenever I can work and start earning my own money, I'm going to start, just grabbing sneakers. So there was a point in my adult life where I really wasn't into sneakers like that. There was a point where I was like, you know what? I'm 23 now. I'm grown. I need to wear hard bottom shoes everywhere I go. That stuff hurts. Yeah. Hard bottom shoes hurts. That's the first thing. Secondly, it's not that it's not that functional to me when you're walking around in a store. So I wanted to be a little older before I got that old. And then I just said, you know what? Let me just go ahead and just start buying whatever it is that I want. So as I started getting older, I just started, if I saw a pair that I like, and again, it goes back to basketball, but it also goes to a love of hip hop. If you know anything about Tribe Called Quest, Phife Dawg would have a
Yep.
Chris Webber jersey. He'd have on some fly sneakers, KMD. There was just so many hip hop artists. I mean, obviously, Fresh Prince, Public Enemy, Run DMC. So I remember chasing down British Nikes, and I remember MC Hammer used to wear those. But we were chasing down Troops, British Nikes, Diodoras, stuff like that. So it was so much variety. So when it was time for me to go ahead and just get into my sneakerdom, I just kind of just went, not necessarily crazy, but you know, just started just picking up something that I like every time I felt like it.
Well, so what was the first pair of shoes that you got that you like, the sneaker that you coveted the most, that was your first purchase?
Oof. Okay, so if you're asking me what my grail is, the one that
Yes.
flipped that switch for me,
Mm-hmm.
always gonna be Jordan 6. Always gonna be the Jordan 6. And the reason why is because it was again, everything ties back to family and friends for me. So I remember where I was when Michael Jordan won his first title. I was in Haynesville Apartments. I was at my friend Lindy and Money's house. Um, you remember Money?
Yes.
Yeah. So I was at Lindy and Money's house. Me and my brother, Ish, rest in peace, Ish, RJ, Derek. Um, we were we had just been anticipating what we were doing. What's so crazy is what we did that week, or I think it wasn't even a whole week because it was kind of a quick series between the Lakers and the Bulls. It was a quick series. It was 5 games, I think. And I remember us walking around. I remember us walking around with a recorder, doing terrible, terrible raps, talking about the Bulls and the Blazers. Um, I mean, horrible, horrible raps. But when Michael Jordan wins that first title, I was with those guys and I was out past curfew. I was out way past curfew to watch that game. I got in so much trouble.
Mm.
I got home because I was out way past the street lights being on. Got a spanking, absolutely did. But again, it was well worth it because we didn't have school. I don't think. I think that was like the last day of school or something like that, or the next day was the last day of school. Um, yeah, just hanging out with a friend. So sixes have always been the grail. So anytime something good happens to me in life, and again, you wear your shoes and you get rid of them. But anytime something good happens to me, like professionally or whatever, it's like, all right, well, let me go ahead and buy a new pair of sixes to commemorate this promotion, this child being born, this moving into this house, this marriage, this anniversary, whatever. You know what I mean? So it's always, for me, the grail's always going to be the Jordan 6.
Tight, tight. Man, I tell you, so is that your all-time favorite sneaker?
I'm gonna say, gosh, okay, so I think that is my all-time favorite of all. I think that's my favorite. The favorite that I own right now, I think is probably the Kobe Protro 1.
Okay.
Um, um, I also got a pair of what's it called? Electric Lime Kobe Elite 11s. Uh, some Kobe, the Crazy Eights, the black and white ones. I've got
Mhm.
those. Um, and I got a New York pair of LeBron 8s. Yeah, the Harwood Classic New York Knick pair of LeBron 8s. I think those are probably my favorites in my collection right now. They,
Tight.
yeah, they do not get much airtime. As a matter of fact, I wore the sixes today. Uh, I wasn't feeling that well at work, so I was like, this will make me feel good. So I
Yeah.
stopped playing the sixes. But they don't. They give me superpowers. Yeah, those favorites, they don't come out that often.
Yeah, man. I still love 'em. I think my favorite is the 96 up tempos.
Ooh, ooh. So I saw where you had a pair of the D Browns, I think. The
Yeah, I still
Reebok.
got them.
Oh my God. Ah, now those are a pair I wish that I had because I remember, and this is probably no, that's not. This is probably one of your favorite hoopers, but I remember that dunk contest with Kemp and D Brown,
Yeah,
and and on nine. Full disclosure, on 9 foot hoops, I was emulating everything Sean Kemp did.
me too.
Oh my God, man, Sean Kemp was so there are certain ballers. There's certain ballers that are like synonymous with Hood before the Allen Iverson wave came. Larry Johnson was one of them,
Mm-hmm.
but it was also Sean Kemp. Sean Kemp was like the Hood's hooper. Like
Yes.
like he's dunking on people, talking shit, pointing at them, and when
The,
he's dunking on them in the most disrespectful way possible.
the Lister Blister.
Oh my God. So there is, and I think we mentioned it I think it was like a couple months ago where we mentioned it together, mentioned it to one another. There's a dunk where he sets a screen at the top of the key, and so he picked Mark Jackson. It was a give and go. He goes up, goes to the side, and dunks it sideways.
Yeah,
And I'm like, holy hell! Like, how do you stop that guy?
that was in the Garden too.
Yes,
And I just
yeah.
remember the crowd's reaction after he dunked it.
It sucked the air out the room. It was like, oh,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, where can and what that groan was is, can we have one of those? Like we got that big block, uh, Charles Oakley with that giant flat top and beard, and that's it. Like he's rebounding, he's that 13-footer, and that's it. Like, ooh, can we get one of those? Whew,
Matter of
it was
fact, it
crazy.
was on Super Slams of the NBA, which is on YouTube.
Yes, yes, that's a
I,
good one, man.
I watched that last night, and I watched that 91 dunk contest last night too.
Ooh, yeah. D Brown. Who else was in there? Larry was in there, I think.
No, Rex Chapman was in it.
Oh, yes. Rex could dunk too now.
Yeah,
Rex could dunk. Rex
he
was
was
good.
in it.
Who else?
Um, who else was in it? Kenny Smith, Blue Edwards.
Oh my God. I liked Blue Edwards. Eastern
I did too.
Carolina.
Yep. I'm
Eastern
trying to
Carolina.
remember who else was in it. Mahmoud Abdul Rauf was in the dunk contest too.
Was this before? This is
Was
before
he?
he
No,
was
no, no, no,
started.
no. I take that back. That was 93. I'm tripping. Um, golly, who else was in it? It was a Pacers player named Kenny Williams,
I remember him. Number 40. Was it 44?
44, and
Yeah.
Kendall Gill.
Kendall Gill. The bootleg Jordan, I think.
Yep.
Kendall Kendall Gill was always an enigma to me. He
Yeah, me
always
too.
was. He was he was there. He was like right there on the precipice of being great. It was like he was just always there. He was always like 19-5 or 20-5, but never much more than that. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he was an enigma. I will say that.
Yeah. And speaking of the aforementioned Mahmoud Abdul Rauf,
Mm-hmm.
see that you've made the conversion and like went on a journey towards practicing Islam. So
Sure.
talk about that. Curious as to hear how that came about.
Okay. Well, so first of all, yeah, it's So it's a unique journey, I'll say that. So as I been, around a lot of different people, spent some time in the military and have been around people of all different walks of life. There came a time for me where I start to really like question like who am I really spiritually, man? And I was just I was trying to find out who I felt I really was when it comes to my faith walk, honestly. And I got my hands on a lot of different books and started listening to a lot of different speakers, man. And shout out to Dr. Joyce DeGray. She wrote this book called Post-Traumatic Slave Disorder, where it talked about, a lot of the things that happened to us during slavery, a lot of things that happened to us, throughout that time period, and how, we were stripped of a lot of different things. Then I started listening, and I got kind of connected with some brothers from the nation. And they were putting me on to, and that's the Nation of Islam. They started putting me on to, a lot of different speakers, one of which was a guy named Leo Muhammad. And he really provoked my thought process about who it is that I was and who we were as Black people in America. And he made this point, and again, when people ask me about Islam, I know it's a part of our walk is to witness to other people, to teach other people, to revert people. And we say revert because we feel that people, especially Black people, were already Muslim. We were just changed through that middle passage over here. So we normally say a person will revert back to Islam. But one of the things I would always do is challenge a person to think about what it is that they did, or challenge them to think about the way they perceive the words. So there was this study where he said there's an anthropologist, and his name is Professor Mendel's Law, and it talked about some of the earliest archaeological finds, talking about where the original man came from, and it talked about Zinjanthropus and stuff like that, and I kept researching and I stumbled upon where there had been a Quran found in some slave quarters and some slave hideaway areas in South Carolina. And this guy, he was a Muslim. He was writing in Arabic and talking, and he was praying to Allah, and he was talking about how they're trying to get him to change the way he spoke, and trying to beat Islam out of him and stuff like that. So some of those things, they really, really resonated in me. And when it came down to it, it was a question to myself. I was like, okay, so if in my estimation, I felt like after I did all my research, I felt like, well, this is something that was originally ours. It was taken from us. And it was just like, okay, so let me just go ahead and get it back and slowly build on getting it back day by day. So again, Islam it was not an easy transition. Again, Shahada is not difficult, but again, it's something that you have to do. But also, like my first Ramadan, man, it was shell shock, man. It was like, whoo, you mean I can't drink even water at all? Like nothing, like not even chew gum. So the discipline of Islam is what really, really, especially in the nation. And I know you have Orthodox Islam, you have Sufi, you have Sunni Muslim, you have Nation of Islam, and I was primarily taught by brothers in the Nation of Islam first.
Mhm.
Then I transitioned to Orthodox Islam. But the thing that appealed to me the most is the cleaning up of the mind of Black men, especially, and the propping up and the taking of the ownership, the pride in which they had, the discipline that they had. It really spoke to me. It really appealed to me. So when it came time to make, or to do shahada, to take the shahada, it was, for me, it was really a no brainer, honestly.
No, what's the shahada?
Mm. That's basically when you are where you're saying there is no God but God, you are saying that, you know, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, is the seal of the prophets, and um, pretty much, yeah, just that's pretty much really honestly it. Is
Okay,
that you're God other than God Himself.
understood. Man, so how long has this process been going for you?
About 8 years.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. So legally still undergoing the last name change. It is not an easy process. I'll say that. And again, we get busy. But I did recently just have a daughter, so she is born with that last name, my new last name, Shabazz. So that's really cool. But again, I always tell people I practice Islam because I haven't perfected it yet. Um,
I like that.
it's I practice it because I have not perfected it yet, and it's an everyday, not necessarily a struggle, but it's a task every day to make sure that you find the time to pray 5 times a day, to make sure that you know do wudu and things of that nature that you're supposed to. And that's just basically the bathing before we pray and stuff like that. Because again, I don't work from home all the time. Might do it periodically.
Hmm.
Um, I'm home for Juma prayer every Friday. My life isn't set up that way, so it's it can be a bit trying from time to time. But again, that's why I say for me, I practice it and I haven't perfected it yet. A lot of times.
I love it, man. That's beautiful to hear, man. Seriously. And
Listen,
props to you.
I appreciate it, man. Thank you.
Yes,
Alhamdulillah.
sir. And then also wanted to talk about fatherhood. I imagine that's got to be a very beautiful, very rewarding thing for a person like yourself. So what's fatherhood like for you?
Well, so first of all, it's beautiful. It's beautiful when it's not waking you up at 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, and then 4 o'clock when you got to be up at 5. It's
Oh,
beautiful.
good point.
No, I'm
Good
just kidding,
point.
man. Honestly, man. So again, I'm recently married. I was married in almost 2 years ago in 2002, 2022. Excuse me. She'll kill me if I mess up the date. So my wife had 3 children from a previous marriage, and I have a son, my son Miles, from a previous relationship. So all together now we have, my princess Imani. So we have 5. Now it is every day it's an adventure, man. It's an adventure every day, and it's extremely fulfilling. So I can tell you about that. Being a father, being a husband has helped me honestly, man, find purpose. I am not the same person that I was prior to being married and being a father, man. Because having people, three or what's me about to say three, but 5 people looking at you at all times for guidance, for strength, for protection, um, it's humbling, but it's also a driver, man. It reinvigorates you sometimes, and it beats you down, but as it's an album. Talib Kweli, he said, "Beautiful struggle." It's a beautiful struggle. It truly is that, because there are times where you got to be the heavy hand, you got to be the long arm of the law, you got to be the judge, jury, executioner. It's sometimes when you just say, "Hey, just come sit by me and let's play Streets of Rage. Let's just blow off some steam.
Yeah.
Let's beat up some bad guys together." You know what I mean? So it's a delicate balance, but again, man, for me, it's helped me find a second gear. It's helped me focus, find purpose, man. Like, and I got to be honest, once you lock into knowing that these people depend on you for everything, because they can't do for themselves. So honestly, it's helped me like lock in, especially professionally, man. Professionally, I've grown leaps and bounds. Um, I've grown leaps and bounds because again, everything that you do isn't just for you anymore. So man, that's the good thing about fatherhood, man. Fatherhood is a trip, man. It really is. It's amazing. It's beautiful. And I love it.
Dope. You just wrapped it up so succinctly. So now we're going to get into the 5 questions segment. So the first and last question are the same question I ask every guest I have on here. Questions 2 through 4 are 100% random. So question number 1, what were Damon's go-to school lunch items?
Whew, cheeseburger, French fries, and that triangle orange juice that used to be kind of frozen.
Yeah.
Yes. I'm not gonna give any credence to eating I'm not gonna give any light to that pizza. Not gonna give any life to it. I know everybody's saying that square pizza. Nah, it was the burger. Shout out to the people that did used to eat the fake McRib at the cafeteria. I know you remember that.
I was one of them. I ain't even gonna hold you. I was that guy at one point.
Oh my God.
And then they put that chicken parmesan out and I saw the light.
It was over.
That chicken parm Fridays, boy, that was the deal right there.
Undefeated. Shout out to the strawberry smash.
Well, you unlocking some memories, dog.
Shout out to the strawberry smash.
That strawberry smash was, boy, that was everything to me, man.
Unstoppable.
All right, question number 2. What was the last thing you bought from TJ Maxx?
Whew. It wasn't this sweater, I promise. The last thing I bought from TJ Maxx was probably some Ninja Turtle socks for my oldest daughter.
That is such an underrated place to get socks, man. Seriously.
Yes. I've gotten Voltron socks from there. I've gotten Ninja Turtle. I got Mario Brothers socks from there. Yeah, man. That's an untapped resource. Trust me.
I'm there literally every Saturday getting something from there, whether it's socks, whether it's candles. Oh.
Yeah. Or coffee mugs, too. Don't sleep on the coffee mugs.
Yes. Yes.
Don't sleep on the coffee.
100%. Question number 3. Who was your favorite high school teacher?
Miss Floyd. Miss Floyd, she was a literature teacher. She was goodness. She was just challenging. She knew that there was something underneath the surface, and she would always try to pull it out of a lot of different people. But she would definitely. She was somebody I used to actually write to when I was in basic training, as a matter of fact.
Okay.
So yeah, shout out Miss Floyd, and shout out Coach Green too, man. Coach Green he was a mess, and I love. You know what? There was a time when I first moved back. I was going to a watering hole just to grab a drink, and I saw Secrets, and Secrets was a thing for us when we were in school. And I know it's relocated and everything, so I went in there, and I think as a matter of fact, it was his birthday, so I saw him, gave him some dap, gave him a hug, gave him some love, man. I just had to crack up on that guy. I know he was like a rival of mine in school, but he was a trip. He was a ball of fire to be around, man.
100%, man. And by all means, do not call him bacon, because that I never realized that was the one word that you call him that just absolutely just pissed him off.
Listen, oh my God. So there was the worst gym class of all time. It was me. It was Tony Fordyce. It was Truss. It was, this is already bad. It was Marcel Jackson. It was Nara Bryant.
Oh yeah, I know. God.
Shout out to all y'all. I love all y'all. And we were in there just misbehaving, being crazy and stuff like that. And coach has got us running the track. He's got us running the track. And one day I'm just with the shits just one day. And I'm rolling, I'm talking trash, I'm cracking jokes. And I'm leaning down and I'm tying my shoe because he's got us about to run the track. And I was like, y'all ever notice how, this is a dirty joke, but not too dirty. I was like, hey man, y'all ever notice how like your ass is blacker than the rest of your body? And I was like, I wonder how dark Coach Green's ass is. And man, and when I stood up, he was right behind me. I was like, I know. And I just I was like, I know. I tried to dodge him for the rest of the week, man. I promise you.
Man.
Yeah, man. I apologize.
Coach Green was a piece of work, man.
Yeah, man. Love that guy though. He was an integral part of my upbringing, man. He was.
Question number 4. What's your favorite Geechee term?
Oh my God. What's my favorite? I think it's Boy Eat Anything. Boy Slack. I think Boy Slack is the best one. Boy, too slack. Because and the thing is, I still think because a lot of Geechee slang is starting to get out there, like bussing, like the world's got bussing now.
Mm-hmm.
They didn't know that was ours first,
Talk
but
about it. Yes.
yeah, they didn't know that was ours first. We've been bussing since 2003 or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, man, like I remember old Southern people, grandmothers, aunts, I mean, they would say if they saw something that was nasty, they would say, "Ugh, it's slack, it's too slack." So I love Boy Slack, Boy Too Slack. I love that one. That's my favorite. Me and the wife, who is not Geechee, by the way,
Mm-hmm.
is not Geechee at all. She loves to hear me talk Geechee. She loves to hear that stuff.
Yeah, I think my favorite Geechee term is mixing.
Mixing?
Yeah.
Oh my God.
Because mixing can mean so many different things.
Yes. Yes.
Like, why you all in my mix? What the mix is? Your boy trying to mix up? Like it's almost it's like the Swiss Army knife of Geechee terms, man.
Yes. I remember a girl I think I was working at I think it was Verizon at the time. It was this young lady. She had these eyebrows. They looked like she dipped her fingers in motor oil and just did like this. And and she was talking about, guy girl relations as people always do.
Mm-hmm.
And said, and she said, if he out here mixing, I'm gonna be out here mixing. And I was like, I wanted to because again, I'm from Moncks Corner. I'm not from Charleston. They're
Yeah.
different things for those that don't know. And I'm like, I don't know what the first time I heard, I was like, I don't know what the hell that means. What does mixing mean? And she said it again, and I was like, yeah, yeah, I be mixing all the time. And again, still out of context, was
Yeah.
completely lost. But it was the first time I heard it, and I was blown. I was like, I don't even know what that means. I'm black, and I don't know what that means. Yep, don't know
And
what that means.
question number 5. What was the last thing that really made you laugh?
Whew, the last thing that really made me laugh, goodness, I'm gonna go with something that's happened pretty recent, that's PG. Larry David. Larry David is insane.
That's
Larry
my
David,
guy.
he is insane. I always tell my wife she's the female Larry David because everywhere Larry David goes, there is just debauchery and I mean, he doesn't follow any rule ever that's laid out in front of him at all. But Larry David is talking to this Hasidic Jew guy. And Larry David's a Jew, but he's not well, excuse me, he's Jewish, but he's not really Jewish.
Yeah.
Like he's practicing. He doesn't speak like Yiddish or anything like that. So the guy's saying this and he's saying that, and Larry David's like, yeah. And the girl's like, what did you say? He's like, yeah, yeah. And I'm like, so I pause it. And I'm like, babe, did he just throw a few in there and cut off his conversation? He's the greatest of all time.
The GOAT.
Listen, I'm eagerly anticipating season 12 of Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Yes.
That last episode was insane, and I've been clamoring for my Larry David fix ever since.
You and me both. You and me both. What's your
Yeah.
favorite bonus question? What's your favorite Curb episode?
I think it's the one where the guy who's blind, who his friend is a musician, he's blind. He thinks that he's dating a supermodel. She's ugly. I mean, she's ugly as heck. And the blind guy tells Ben Stiller, he introduces the guy to Ben Stiller, and he says, hey, keep your hands off of her. She's a model. And she looks at him like, and they do the stare down, looking at me. He looks at him and he looks at me. That's what it looked like, because they were just staring like, are you going to tell him? No, are you going to tell him? So yeah, and then there's a part in that episode where that same guy is holding a concert in this small hall, and everybody like leaves, and Larry David is like sitting there trying to enjoy the show, and everybody's leaving because he's horrible. And Larry David's wife is just like, oh, okay, I've had enough. I gotta go. And he just is still sitting there.
Yeah.
He's still just sitting there, and as the guy does his longest run, and he hits the piano, and he's like ready for his applause and his adornment, and it's just Larry David in there clapping. I'm like, yo, he's the worst of all time, but the
worst.
best.
Man, dog. Larry David is a national treasure, straight up.
Yes, he's highly quotable. Highly
Yes.
quotable.
I think
Just
I think my favorite episode was I can't remember what season it was, when he showed up to Jeff's house, and I think it was just his daughter there, and there was a glass of wine and a glass of grape juice.
mhm.
And she drank the wine instead of the grape juice. And she ended up drunk, and and then Larry pulls up back to the house, and Susie's standing up front with her arms folded. He's like, "You sick fuck, Larry David. You got my fucking daughter drunk."
Yeah, yeah,
I mean, just reading him the riot act.
yeah. Listen,
And then oh God, I think he took a doll. I think he took it, Jeff's daughter's doll, when he was there, and I think he like took it away from her or something and tried to hide it. And she was like, "Wait a second, no. The dolls he took the doll's head off." And Susie is just hysterical. She's like, "You and Jeff, one of y'all like, go get the doll." She's like, "You four-eyed fuck and you fat piece of shit." Anytime Susie and Larry have a confrontation, gold.
so there's two times where they absolutely get me to where I can't breathe. Larry David is thinking that he's on his deathbed, and he's saying his final goodbyes to everybody. And he gets to Susie, and she says, "Laugh." And on his deathbed, he says, "No, no, no, no." He's like, "No, I'm not even gonna pretend to like you right now." And then in the last episode of season 11, where she's trying to plan this soiree at his house, and she hits him with the greatest thing I've ever heard. He starts the wrap up music on her. He says, ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum. And she's like, "Well, what the hell is that?" He's like, the Academy wrap it up music when you've been going on too long. "Oh, so you're wrapping me up right now?" Well, she's like, "Well, fuck you. Get the fuck out of here." Ba-da-da-dum, ba-da-da-dum, cutting you off. Cutting you off.
Oh man.
Yo, that is the greatest. That sums up their relationship to a T. It's the
Yes.
best. It's the best rivalry on TV. It rivals George and Florence. It does.
Oh my gosh. Susie Green for president.
Yes, man.
2024.
She's the
Man,
best.
so anything you want to plug or promote, the floor is yours.
Oh man, nothing to plug, nothing to promote, man. Other than, man, it's been wonderful connecting with you, man. Everybody tuning into the podcast, it's crazy. Listen, Danny is probably the most entertaining and interesting person that I've ever seen, man. If I could tell you guys anything, man, it's no more time for hate, man. Spread love, man. Spread joy. Do what you like. You know what I mean? As long as you're not hurting anybody, man, and just love on one another, man. Love each other hard as hell, man.
Man, great last words, man. Make sure y'all like, download, and subscribe to Since We Last Spoke with Danny Foxworth. Make sure you follow my YouTube page. I'm at Danny Foxworth 843, where you can find all the video episodes for this podcast and my baseball podcast, At the Plate with Danny Foxworth. And for Damon and myself, y'all be good.
Love, love, love.